Bueno, todos porfa silencio. Pues ahorita yo lo estoy introduciendo a pues dos representantes de iMatter Youth. iMatter Youth es un grupo de jóvenes y de adultos pues que nació en Estados Unidos, que se enfoca en pues mitigar el cambio climático y en hacer acciones en contra del cambio climático. So right now I'm introducing you to iMatter Youth. iMatter Youth is a group of youth and a group of adults that start in the United States that they do projects and they do projects to help and mitigate and help mitigate climate change and the effects of climate change in the planet.
Great. Thank you, Carlos. And hello, everyone. Maddie, you should say hi too.
Hi. How's it going?
We are so excited to spend some time with you. Thank you for giving us time. If at any, we hope to make this kind of an interactive session, even though it's a lot of you and just a couple of us. So hopefully we'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end. I'm going to share my screen with you now. And we're going to start with some just introductions of Maddie and I. So Maddie, I'll let you go first.
Hi, everyone. My name's Maddie Adkins. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to Portland State University here, and I'm studying environmental studies. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about my story in a couple of slides.
Yeah, and everyone, hello, I'm Larry Kraft. And are you all seeing us okay when we're, as well as the slides right now? Yeah, I'm assuming yes. So my role, I'm the executive director of iMatter, but really in the case of iMatter, that means more that I'm chief mentor, because iMatter is a youth-driven organization founded by a 13-year-old about 9 years ago. But you'll hear more about that story in a little bit from the video. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and stories are really important to iMatter. We think that they're kind of at the foundation of the work that we do. So my story, and why I'm showing here a picture with my daughter, Jamie, is that I left a different career in technology several years ago to focus on climate change. And a conversation with my daughter really describes why. She was 9 at the time, and we had, my wife and I had just taught our kids about climate change, and she thought about it for a while and asked me, well, is there something we can do about it? And I said, well, yeah, we can. And she said to me, well, Daddy, let's just stop it. And that caused me to think of two things. One is, well, that's you could say that that's naive to just stop it. But actually what I realized is it's not. Climate change is an eminently solvable problem, and we just need the will and the desire to do it. And I think young people have that sort of innate, let's just do it mentality. So I thought that was really important. And then the other thing was, when she said that to me, it really reached me in a very deep emotional way. And I think that's the other thing on this issue that youth have the ability to do, because it is your future more than it's my future that we're talking about. And when youth speak authentically on this, it's really powerful. So that kind of guided my involvement with iMatter. But let's now go into a bit more about iMatter. And so this is where we'd like to share a couple of videos with you. The first one is the iMatter story, which will be about 2 minutes and tells the background of iMatter and its founding. Okay, is that first video done?
Already finished the first video.
Okay. So I'm going to ask now Sophia to play the second video. That gave you some background on iMatter. iMatter serves young people who are passionate about climate change and the environment and want to do something meaningful about it. And one of the key things we're doing is a campaign called iMatter Now, and this video will tell you a little bit about what's going on with that.
All right, we already finished the second video.
Great. Can you lower the screen a little bit again? Oh, Sophia?
You're in full screen.
Yeah, but can you lower your screen a little bit? Right now we're viewing the ceiling. Yes, great. Okay. So we're going to go into a bit more now about the campaign, but right now, kind of looked a couple months ago, and iMatter has youth that are participating active in 17 states in the United States and a couple of provinces in Canada. And that's what these maps that the green shows, the states where we have folks in. And the red stars are where we're going to tell you a bit more the story of the various things going on in those places. And the first one is, Maddie mentioned she's going to tell you her story a bit more. And it starts at that star that's sort of in about the middle of to the right side of the United States in Indiana. So I'll turn it over to Maddie.
All right. So my story begins when I was a freshman in high school, and my parents told me that we were moving and we were leaving everything behind. I was leaving my school, my friends, and basically everything I knew to go to this brand new town that I had never heard of called Carmel, which was about 2 hours north of where I currently lived. And I was so nervous. So I contacted all these teachers at my new school, and they were club sponsors. So I asked if I could join their clubs, even though it was the middle of the year, because I was really nervous about being able to make friends at my new school. And one of those clubs that I reached out to was the environmental club. And I just reached out to it because I was like, yeah, I know that climate change is an issue and I kind of care about it, but I wasn't particularly passionate about climate change. And I joined the environmental club, but the thing was, everybody in the club were seniors. So the next year, everybody in the club graduated and I was the only one in the club. So I was the president of the club, but I was the only one who was still in the club. So that was how I became the president of the environmental club when I was a sophomore. And overall, that experience, I would say, was very frustrating because for a couple of reasons. One of them was that even though I went to a school with 5,000 kids, I could only get about 5 kids to join the environmental club. And even those 5 people sometimes didn't show up to meetings or just weren't very engaged. And so it was really, really hard to get other people to feel as passionate about something as I did. And I felt like climate change was such a huge crisis that everybody should get it, everybody should understand, and everybody should want to do something about it. But people just weren't as excited about it as I was. And I would try to do things that felt meaningful. Like I did this recycling project where I tried to get everybody in the school to recycle their milk cartons at lunch. And one of the days I went into the cafeteria and I looked at the bin of, the recycling bin. And I looked over the edge and there was only one milk carton in the bottom of the bin. And only one person had recycled their milk carton. And I was so frustrated because I had worked so hard just to get those recycling bins in the cafeteria and nobody even wanted to recycle. I would go home and I would watch these documentaries about climate change and I would see the Arctic sea ice melting. And then I would go to my environmental club meeting and we would be making recycled Christmas ornaments out of pine cones. And I would just feel like it was so meaningless, in the face of this humongous, awful crisis. So I reached out to some adults who later to me became mentors, and they guided me to start what we later called the Promise Project. And we called it that after the promise that previous generations need to make to current generations, that when we grow up, our world will be livable, healthy, and beautiful. And that this is a promise that adults need to keep and that kids need to hold them accountable to. And so basically starting this project was my first introduction into the world of public policy, which finally felt big enough. I wrote a resolution, I met with the members of my city council, and I also met with the mayor of my city. And at first it was very confusing because I had no idea what I was doing. But once I started to get into it, I realized that it was incredibly empowering. And I was also a little bit angry because I was like, how come nobody has ever told me about this before? Like that I could go into my city and make such a huge difference. And so eventually we did have success. We passed a resolution, even though we had an all Republican city council and our mayor was also a Republican. So I realized that climate change was not a partisan issue, that it was something that everybody could care about if you just worked with the people in your city to create a plan that everybody can agree with. However, as wonderful as that was, I still felt really frustrated and disempowered about being an activist. And I didn't want to call myself an activist because even though I was doing great things in Carmel, I was the only one doing great things in Carmel. And I felt like I was the only one in the entire world who was actually working on this. I still felt so alone. And then my parents decided to move again. And this is when we moved to Portland, Oregon, which is a lot farther away than Carmel was. And so I was like, fine, it's a clean break. I'm just going to stop doing environmental work. I'm going to try something else. But sometimes you don't decide what you do. And when you know what you know about the climate crisis, it's very hard to turn away. And so my mentors from Indiana introduced me to some of the adults at iMatter, one of which was Larry here, and they became my new mentors. And I also at iMatter met new friends who lived all across the continent, who cared just as much about climate change as I did and wanted to do something just as meaningful as I wanted to do. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone when I was an activist. And now I've been able to connect to more opportunities and finally feel comfortable calling myself an activist. I love being an activist, and I'm proud to be an activist. I've been able to attend conferences, give presentations like this one, work on more local campaigns in Oregon, and I'm studying the environment in college because I've decided that I can finally say that this issue is my life's purpose. This is what I was put on this earth to do. And I'm so happy that I found a community of people that I can do it with. So with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about iMatter and how much it has meant to me. So here at iMatter, even though I'm a young person, I totally see that adults played a very important role in my story, and that's the same thing here. Here we have what we call an intergenerational collaboration. Basically what that means is that at iMatter, youth and adults stand on equal ground. It's like a partnership where the role of youth and the role of adults are equally important, and we both have equally important roles to play. The role of youth is that we are moral authority. And basically what that means is that we are the reason that people will take action on climate change in a way that's fast enough and urgent enough, because it's not just about data, it's not just about saving nature. If you don't care about nature, which I know that we all do, but some people don't, if you don't care about nature, forget that. Think about the fact that these are your children and that this is about their lives, and that's going to be what causes people to act. And youth also approach climate change from a very authentic place because we approach it from a place of personal necessity. We have to do something about the crisis. We see that this isn't about, our kids and our grandkids. It's not some far off problem. This is about our lives. And if we don't solve the issue of climate change, it's going to be something that we have to deal with in our future lives as adults. And I don't want that. I'm sure all of you don't want that. So we are approaching this from a place of necessity. And it's also very exciting for cities, especially city councilors. They always tell me, we never see young people come to our city council meetings. So when we do see young people come to our city council meetings, we see them step up for what they believe in. It both creates a lot of attention. They're like not used to seeing young people. So when they do, it's like really, they notice it. And it's also incredibly inspiring for people to hear young people speak about what they believe in. So that's the role of youth. The role of adults is that they understand the adult world. You hear me talking about resolutions and city councils and all of these things, and you might be thinking, what is she talking about? Because I don't know what any of those things are. And that's totally okay if that's the case, because I didn't know what any of those things were when I started out. And that's the role of adults. The adult mentors in my life helped me to understand the adult world. They offered guidance and advice and were able to mentor me through this path of taking action in a meaningful way. And they were able to explain to me things that I didn't know and help me strategize and also be there for support. And then with that, so what does this youth-driven, adult-supported action actually look like? Well, the most important thing about the action that we take at iMatter is that it is local. And here's some reasons why. Change at the national level is, unfortunately, slow. It takes a long time to implement the kind of policy we need to solve the crisis, whereas locally, cities can make a lot more change much more quickly. Also, change at the national level happens to be a lot more broad strokes. National policy has to take into account a lot of different places because in the United States, for example, a city in California will be very, very different from a city on the East Coast, from a city in the South. And all of those cities will be super different from a town, which will be super different from a very large city. And so change at the national level has to take into account all of those differences when it makes its policies. Whereas locally, cities can take action that makes sense for them and take into account their own unique needs. They can customize their plans and be more specific so that they can create plans that take into account both their weaknesses and their strengths. So it's sometimes not always possible as well to wait for national policy to happen because we really, with this crisis, don't have time to wait, especially with the current administration who has made it not one of their goals to work on climate policy, we have to work locally because we do not have 4 years to wait for the next president to put climate on his agenda or her agenda. Let's hope. So cities are able to make change more quickly, as I've said. And as you'll later see in this presentation, cities are making change very quickly, and it's very inspiring. At the local level, the individual, one person, has more power. One person can go into a city and create change. Whereas at the national level, you need a lot more people involved. And also at the local level, you're actually making concrete changes. You're not just getting symbolic victories. That's because when you work at the national level, whether you're participating in a march or calling your senator and asking them to pass a bill for you, which are great things to do, you're asking someone else to take action on your behalf. You're asking them to do something for you or vote in favor of your beliefs. But when you work at the local level, you can actually work much more directly. You can propose the actual resolutions that you want passed and, directly ask the city councilors to vote for the thing that you wrote. And so everything at the local level is much more direct. And when you're working directly and seeing the concrete effects of your work, it becomes a lot more inspiring and motivating to be an activist. And you're able to be an activist for a lot longer because you're not so weighed down with all of these defeats. You continuously see the effects of your labor. And so the biggest thing about local action, though, is that it really does work. Because when we get enough local pressure, there will be change at the state level, and then there will be change at the national level. And it starts at the local level. So at iMatter, we support youth in 3 main ways. One of the first ways is through our community, our online community. So we have meetings where twice a month, you can get on a Zoom call just like this one and interact face-to-face and meet people from around the world who are doing work just like you, who care about the crisis just like you, and see those people and talk to those people and connect with those people. And in between, we have tools like Slack, which is an app that we can use to stay in contact with each other, share interesting news articles, and ask questions in between meetings. Then we have the online platform, which is basically like a virtual guidebook to the campaign, which you'll hear more about later. And this online platform explains the steps, provides resources and links, and it's basically a step-by-step layout of the campaign. So you're never confused about what exactly you're doing because you can always just click around on the online platform and figure out how to, move forward. And then we have 2 different mentors, 2 people who are directly invested in you. And one of them is an adult mentor who works locally with you in your city to develop a unique strategy and plan for approaching local action where you live. And then you have a peer mentor who lives anywhere in the world, but who is there with you every step of the way to answer questions, but also to offer support and share stories and just be a friend. So with that, let's see some stories of iMatter's success.
All right, thanks, Maddie. So, okay. All right, I just had a real big echo for a second there. So briefly, we talked about the campaign and this online tool. So this graphic here that starts with what is our ask, collect the data, all those things, those are the quests of the report card resolution campaign. And behind each one of those in our tool are videos and templates and tools and things that can be used to help you or to help a youth leader get prepared and get a really good story and strong pitch to go before their city government. The campaign really starts with gathering data to generate a report card, as was mentioned. And the report card is based on the science of someone by the name of Dr. Jim Hansen, who's one of the top climate scientists in the world. And it's really based on a recipe that he created with a team of scientists a few years ago of what it would take to get out of this climate mess. And so it's actually not a very easy grading scheme because it's not based on what is politically possible. It's based on what the science says is necessary. And so then there are a number of tools in terms of how do you get on the agenda to the city council? How do you present to them? Press tools, because when you're there, you want to get visibility. So how do you reach out to the press, conduct interviews, do a press release, and then delivering your report card and then asking for action. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see something that's kind of hard to read. You see some signatures on the bottom. This is a resolution called the Climate Inheritance Resolution that was passed in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, that committed that city to get off of fossil fuels by 2040, to start developing a plan to do that within 30 days, and to have youth involved in the process. And this is a template that we have available that is used and customized depending on the city's situation. So I'll give you an example of a few campaigns and then we'll open up for questions. So I mentioned one in St. Louis Park, and the team in St. Louis Park last year, actually in March, presented their report card, and you saw a little bit of that in the video. 2 months later, they convinced and pushed the city council to pass that resolution. Now the city has hired a consultant and is developing a climate action plan with these young people involved in the process. And that climate action plan, the goal is to be off of fossil fuels, to be at 0 greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. That same team then spread the campaign, contacted friends they knew in other districts and cities around Minnesota, and then also just through visibility they got through media. We now have about 10 campaigns going throughout the state of Minnesota. Next, Grand Marais, Minnesota. This is a really fun one. So the last group was a group of high schoolers. The team in Grand Marais is led by a really incredible 11-year-old girl named Olya Wright. You can see her on the picture on the right-hand side presenting to their city council. It was someone that knew her, heard about the success in St. Louis Park and told her about iMatter, and she and her mother got in touch with us. She runs a group called the Nordic Nature Group, which is a group of 8 kids from the age of 9 to 14. Grand Marais is a town of about 1,500 people. And she presented the report card and the resolution at a meeting last month, and she convinced their city council to pass the resolution on the spot. And so what's really exciting about this is Grand Marais is going to be a phenomenal example for how small towns in Minnesota and around the country can take aggressive action. And the last one I'll show is in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is interesting in that it was started by Lily Barraclough, and she's in the picture on the left. She's the one on the left in that picture. And she initially did a campaign in Toronto, Ontario, when she was a senior in high school. And then this year, she's a freshman in college at the King's College in Halifax. And so she got a group together there, and she reached out to a high school leader as well. And then they presented to their municipal government last month, was well received. And now they're working on some specific resolutions. The decision in Halifax was to go to some specific climate resolutions as opposed to a climate inheritance resolution. But this is a group that was started by a college student. And that is our slide. So with this, we're gonna stop speaking at you and open it up for hopefully some questions and interaction.
Carlos is just going to do a little summary first in Spanish, just
Okay.
kind of give an overview.
Entonces, rápidamente, si alguno de ustedes no entendió bien pues, lo que hace pues, su grupo, iMatter Youth, pues rápidamente iMatter Youth es pues, un grupo en el que se reúnen pues, generalmente jóvenes, pero jóvenes con adultos. En el que pues, jóvenes y adultos lo que hacen es que pues, trabajan juntos pues, para intentar mitigar el medio ambiente, como lo hacen a través de políticas públicas. Entonces, los adultos están dentro de ese grupo como mentores para ellos, para que los jóvenes entiendan bien pues, cómo funciona pues, dentro de su propia comunidad, cómo funciona la legislación, etcétera. Y los jóvenes lo que hacen es participan dentro de pues, en cabildos abiertos, etcétera, participan en las decisiones, en las legislaciones dentro de sus propias comunidades. La razón por la que ellos hacen eso y no van generalmente a nivel nacional es porque a nivel nacional el cambio es mucho más lento y es mucho más difícil hacer un cambio. Y necesitamos un cambio inmediato, porque pues, el cambio climático es un problema que está pasando, pues como ustedes saben, en este momento y que se tiene que mitigar ya. Entonces, a través de interacciones, a través de que los jóvenes vayan y empujen para que a nivel local, para nivel municipal, local, distrital, se hagan esos cambios, pues podemos en este momento entre todos pues hacer los cambios que se necesitan. Pues en este momento vamos a hacer una ronda de preguntas, pues pueden pasar al frente, hablar aquí en el micrófono para que ellos escuchen las preguntas, ellos se las responden.
Okay, so I'd like to know if maybe a few of us, or maybe all of us, can keep in touch with iMatter to see if maybe we can learn more of your stories and try to do the same, understanding that Latin America and the Caribbean has many different challenges than the United States and Canada, but it would be great, like at least to inspire us, like to maybe keep in touch with kids that are working in other countries. Yeah, because in the end, we're like one America, like America, like all of us, includes America, North America, and South America. So yeah, that would be the question.
Yeah, so I'll start. Oh, I'm hearing an echo, but there we go. So I think, you know, an easy way is to sign up on our website. There's a place to sign up for the newsletter or get involved. And then you'll get pretty much about every month, our young leaders put out a newsletter. And, you know, when we were asked to come present to this, I'm really excited to do so because this obviously has to be a global movement. The tools and things we have, as you understand, are certainly kind of customized for the United States and Canada, but they could be used elsewhere. We would just need a partner to help, you know, customize them a bit for specific situations in Latin America, and then also, you know, in terms of providing the right kinds of support. But in terms of connecting young people together, that's fantastic, and we're happy to. If someone wants to use and help customize the tools, we'd be thrilled.
Right. Thank you. Just one quick announcement. Si quieren hacer alguna pregunta en español, me la pueden decir a mí, pues yo la traduzco para que ellos la entiendan. ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
También yo puedo entender.
Oh, okay. So how does your report card actually work? I'm a bit curious about how your system, your report card works.
Sure. So there's 5 parts to the report card. that make up the overall grade. One is a climate action plan. So does the city have a climate action plan? And then if they have it, how good is it? And good means, does it get to, in the US, we set an A at zero emissions by 2040. And then the second part is renewable energy. So what portion of a city's electricity is provided by renewable sources? And that in the US, the grade is compared to the national average. In Canada, we compare it to the Canadian national average. So that's one of the things where we would have to come up, doing a report card in a different country, have to come up with a different way of approaching that grade. The third portion of the grade is on waste. And waste is really evaluated as, is the amount of waste being generated per person going down? And is the amount that's being recycled or composted going up, right? And those things generate better grades, okay? And the reason we have waste in there is because if you keep waste out of landfills, it reduces the amount of greenhouse gases that are generated from landfills. But it's also kind of a proxy for the amount of new stuff that a city buys. Because the more new stuff that's being purchased, the more fossil fuels are being used to create that new stuff. The fourth part of the grade is carbon removal or carbon sequestration. And that is just, is a city doing something that results in more carbon dioxide being taken out of the atmosphere? And that especially is with things like more trees being planted or more wetlands being preserved, because the recipe that was created by the scientists was for you'd simultaneously have to stop emissions and take some of the carbon out of the atmosphere. And then the last part of the report card grade, and I think this is something that that iMatter's young leaders have really pushed, is that probably the most important part is that our youth involved in the process. And that's really important for two reasons. One is it's your future, so you should be part of deciding on what that's going to be, what that's going to look like. And then it's also there to really as accountability, right? So that as policies and things are put in place, that youth can be there to say, to keep the politicians and community on track, and also to make sure it's done in a right way, in a just way. So that's how it's done. There's a questionnaire that gets filled out ideally with the help of someone in city government, and then that data gets plugged into an online tool, and a report card is automatically generated.
That's great. Thanks, Larry. What's interesting for our group is that on Friday, we have an organization called Ciencias that's coming in to talk to us about some surveys that they're working on that measure some of these things. So there may be a way we can integrate some of those programs.
Yeah. And we started with the report card in the United States, and then through one of our young people, Lily, who you saw in Halifax, she was our first person in Canada, and she really helped for us to customize the tools to be appropriate for Canada, because they need to be a little bit different for Canada than the US. So they're tools.
Sorry, I think we have another question. And actually, speaking of Canada, here's our Canadian delegate, Jennifer Fong.
Yay.
Hi, thanks
Hi.
so much for speaking with us. So Maddie, I think you said that you're studying environmental science. So I was just wondering what other majors or degrees you think would be helpful for learning about climate change and environmental policy changes.
Yeah, so actually I'm not doing environmental science, I'm doing environmental studies, which is just slightly different because I really wanted to focus more on the policy and activism side of things. So you could definitely go into the science side of things. There's a lot of great like environment and natural resources, and a lot of different schools have different options. My school only had environmental science or environmental studies, and I was like, how to choose. But I definitely think that, you know, a focus on environmental law is what I want to do later in life. But definitely public policy, political science degrees can also help, especially if you're looking to get more involved in the policy side of things and the activism side of things, because that's really where a lot of the action takes place, is in policy. So that's a great way to go too.
Have other questions? Okay, so I think the idea is after this, you guys are going to be going into session. And if you would like to discuss this and kind of summarize what you've heard today, and maybe think about ways that we can work more closely with iMatter Youth and maybe partner with them if there's ways we can do that. And then Carlos, do you want to summarize in Spanish?
Ok, entonces apenas terminemos esto, nosotros vamos a ir a nuestras sesiones y dentro de las sesiones vamos a, pues, a dialogar de esto, dialogar sobre, pues, sobre lo que nos, perdón, dialogar sobre lo que nos dijeron y ver lo que nosotros podemos hacer, pues como jóvenes de Latinoamérica, pues bajo el consejo que ellos ya nos dieron y bajo la, pues bajo la, pues la guía de ellos.
Okay, if there's no more questions, then we're going to break into session, and then we'll see you guys later in the afternoon for workshops. So the idea, sorry, Larry, thank you very much for everything, and I think we've recorded this, so we're going to post it. Does the recording get sent to me, or it gets posted?
I'll send you a link to it. And then
Great.
You can
so
download it.
On the GRULAC webpage under resources, we'll be posting this session for you guys all to have access to. Wait, there's one more question? No? Okay. Okay, then. Thank you very much for your time. Nice meeting both of you.
Yeah, if we could just say thank you all very much for your time. It's so motivating to see a group of you all together talking about this kind of stuff. So any ways we can help would be great.